Hello, this is Mike with TCAT's Deep Vinyl Tracks. I'm doing the second part to my video series where I talk about some progressive bands that you may not have heard of. The reason I'm doing this is to try to get the name of some bands that obviously you may not have heard of. Some bands that haven't got the spotlight as much as some others, and also to talk about some bands that are considered progressive, that are still currently around or that are fairly new. Um, there's so many of them that I could put on here. I'm just trying to keep it down to those that I have vinyl or CD copies of that I think that have not gotten the recognition that they probably should have. So this time I want to start out with the band that I've been talking about, and there are a few people in the vinyl community that know who they are, but again, they're probably not getting the recognition they deserve. And the first one is Godspeed, You Black Emperor. This is their first album. The name of it is F sharp, A sharp, Infinity. And there's the little label, you can barely see it, on the top of the original plastic. And there are actually three different photographs that come on these covers. You can see the cover is embossed. There's the name of the band, and down here is the name of the album. The back side, not much to look at there. The album itself, the labels are black, nothing on them. And the only way you can tell which is side one and side two is, well, you can't. You have to look at the dead wax and the numbers in there. Side one is marked A and side two is marked B. Now, the interesting thing about this album is the vinyl came out almost a year before the CD came out. And the CD has a somewhat different track listing than what the vinyl does. The vinyl itself is about 40 minutes, where the CD actually is around 65 minutes and contains additional music, of course. Though there are some things about the vinyl that make it more attractive. The fact is it comes with a lot of different inserts, like this hand-drawn picture from one of the band leaders. Comes with this envelope. I've shown this all before, but I'll go through it again quickly. A little write-up. Another hand-drawn piece of artwork. Another insert. And a smashed copper penny. Now, the original ones came with a Canadian penny that had been smashed. This is the Canadian penny. Since they don't mint the Canadian penny anymore, now they use US pennies. And they're actually smashed on a train track. The train does have something to do with the album itself. There's some field recordings around train stations on the album, and the vinyl has a locked track at the end, which coincides with the name of the record. The locked track makes it so that the very last groove of the track plays over and over and over until you lift the needle off of the track, and it goes from F sharp to A sharp modulation into infinity. If you like, you can play it forever, or until your record player wears out, whichever comes first. They also released this EP called Slow Riot for New Zero Canada. That's the front of it. This EP only has 2 tracks on it. There's the back. The back actually has the title and the band name. And this artwork. This EP, the first side is 45 RPM, where the second side is 33 RPM. So you have to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. Since the B side has some spoken word on it, you can tell if it's playing at the wrong speed pretty quickly. That's one of the inserts. And there's the inner sleeve. That's what it looks like. This first side is Moya at 45 RPM, and it's about 10 minutes. And the second side is BBF3 at 33 RPM, and it's about 13 minutes. Really nice EP, one that I highly recommend. I've mentioned before that on the website Rate Your Music, it has been consistently elected as the #1 EP ever, and it tends to fluctuate between that one and Allison Chains' Jar of Flies, and those are the two EPs that are probably the two top favorites. A lot more people are probably familiar with the Allison Chains EP. Their second full-length album was called Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven, and this was released in the year 2000, October 2000. This one has a single track on each side, but each track takes up the entire side and is quite long. There's the back. There's the inside. And this shows kind of a timeline of how the tracks are broken up. Even though they are full side length tracks, they're more like suites that kind of flow one into the other. The artwork on the inner sleeves is very interesting, and the other side contains pictures. Same thing on the second LP. And each side, well, on this side it lists sleep as being on side 1, and side 2 is antennas to heaven. Now the label on the other side has some cool looking artwork. That's another excellent album. It's pretty much all of Godspeed the Black Emperor's albums are quite excellent. They're one of the original bands to come to direct the way post-metal developed, and then they continued developing past that. Their third album I don't have on vinyl, but it's Yang, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, YNQUI space capital U capital X capital O. And that's what the front of it looks like. The back of it is this. There's the title. This one has some very long tracks on it. Again, it's another double album. And since I have it on CD, I don't have the inserts, unfortunately, but it comes in a separate inner sleeve. And there's the album itself. I think they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks on this. At this point, the band took a break, and it was quite a while. Actually, 12 years later, 2012, they released a new album called Alleluia, Don't Bend, Ascend. Now, during the break, band members started kind of branched out and did their own projects or groups and etc. Silver Mount Zion came from that, but then they got back together, and this was the next one they released. I showed this one just recently on the experimental tag, for those of you who have seen that, and all kinds of goodies just come falling out. There's the back of it, and the inner gatefold. You notice they kind of have that Armageddon type look to their albums and to their artwork. This particular one folds out, way out into this long, double-sided insert. Now, this album also comes with the regular size 12-inch. And like I mentioned before, it shows you the order that the music should be played in. You start with A1, then you move to B1, which is a 7-inch. And there's the 7-inch, what it looks like. Now, the 7-inch has more of the drones on it. These are like drone, it's like drone music, where the 12-inch has more of the post-rock sound. So it goes from A1 to B1, then from A2 to B2. That's the order you play everything in. Okay. So you have to kind of pay attention to what you're doing on that one. The nice thing about the next album, which was Asunder, Sweet, and Other Distress, is that it all came on a single album, kind of set up the same way, where it has the regular style of music that they play, and then the last track on the A side and the first track on the B side are drones. The advantage to doing it on one album, of course, is you don't have to change records so much. But also, it's really cool the way the post-rock music just flows and everything kind of melds together into the drone for the first side. And on the second side, the drone starts it, and then everything breaks up and then forms into another beautiful track. This is one of the inserts that it comes with. This is the inner sleeve, and as you can see, their inner sleeves are just as amazing as all the other parts of the album. But then you get the labels, which are kind of plain, and they're written backwards. You have to hold it up to a mirror to read what they are, unless you can read backwards. Another excellent album. And they've also got 2 more albums, which I don't have, unfortunately. I am planning on getting them eventually, but for now I don't have them. All right. So the next, we talked a lot about Godspeed You Black Emperor because they're one of my favorite bands. But the next artist that I have is one that a few of you have probably heard of, many of you, but seemed to skip over when he left the band that he was originally with. That band was Supertramp. The artist is Roger Hodgson. When he broke up with Supertramp, he released a series of about 4 solo albums. And this one is his first one, In the Eye of the Storm. There's a lot less people that have heard this than what I originally thought. Because you don't tend to see a whole lot of it in the vinyl community, at least I haven't, and it's an excellent album, especially if you like the Supertramp sound. The tracks are mostly quite long, and his subsequent albums would be more radio friendly than what this one is, but this still has that wonderful, bright Supertramp sound. Very nice album, highly recommended. That's the back of it. And you should pick that up if you see it, especially if you like the Supertramp sound. If they would have put that album along with the Supertramp Brother Where You Bound, which was all sung by Rick Davies, they would have had the perfect Supertramp album. The next band is one that comes from the Netherlands, I believe. I could be wrong, so if you know different, then let me know in the comments. But the band is called Kayak, and this is a band that I was made aware of back in the 70s when they were first releasing their albums by a record store employee. This is one of their albums called Starlight Dancer, and the very progressive, kind of pop progressive, somewhat radio friendly. They're shorter tracks, but there's a nice picture of them there. Shorter, more radio friendly tracks, but also quite well composed. They have that accessible, very accessible progressive sound to their music, and one that I'm surprised wasn't more popular than what they are. They are still releasing albums, by the way. They're still touring. I also have a copy of this one, Phantom of the Night. This one is the first one that I heard. It's probably a little less progressive than the one I just showed you, but there's some really amazing songs, especially the ballads are really strong on this one. The title track, Phantom of the Night, is beautiful. Daphne, Laurel Tree, Ruthless Queen is another beautiful song. First Signs of Spring, just an amazing album. There's their picture again. A few more members of the band there. And it's on the Janus label also. More modern band. For those of you who are familiar with Toby Driver, he was the head guy over a band called Maudlin of the Whale, who did a lot of experimental metal. The next band he came out with was Kayo Dot, and it's a band I really love. I just wish I had more of their albums. This is the only one I have of theirs on vinyl. I'm seeking to change that. This one here is more of a improvisational sound. It's not heavy like his original sound. Some of the Kayo Dot albums are quite close to Toby Driver's original band, Maudlin of the Whale. This one here is has more of a jazz feel to it. Even the vocal parts, the vocal melodies seem to be improvised. Beautiful cover. There's the gatefold. And there are, in my opinion, better Kayo Dot albums, even though this one is really good. Comes on maroon vinyl. Again, nothing on the labels. The labels are blank, so you have to read the dead wax to figure out which side is which. And it also came with the CD, same album. A great band for you to check out. Their music moves from goth sound to jazz improvisation like that one, to experimental metal on some of their albums. Just an amazing band, well put together music. An older band, again, that was around quite a while ago. It's Lucifer's Friend. I just found this album not too long ago. I ordered it online for a really good price. This is a band that started out very progressive. Actually, they started out as being what they consider, or a lot of critics consider them to be, the original black metal band with their first album. But they surprised everybody with their next album and made it more progressive. This one has the progressive edge to it, but it moves more towards a radio-friendly sound. Still a really good album. And it's on the Elektra Butterfly label. Another band you would want to check out. Phil Manzanera. is an artist. He's a guitarist that came from the band Roxy Music, and he put out some solo albums. This is one of them. Kind of reaches more for a jazz fusion type sound. And I wish I knew a little bit more about the album itself. The sound of the album's great. I really like the sound of it. It's on the EG label. If you look at the inner sleeve, you can see the tracks are fairly long, mostly instrumental. So that one is called Guitarissimo. Phil Manzanera was also had a project called 801. This is 801 Live. And there's Phil Manzanera, and you notice Eno is also one of the members of the band. He was also with Roxy Music. This is another great album. Features some vocals, but it's mostly instrumental. Again, it's got that jazz fusion sound to it. Jazz rock fusion. And another great album that's highly recommended, 801 Live. A band that I really love, that I'm having a harder time finding as much love for as what I have for some reason, but it's a band called Mercury Rev. Their first three albums were kind of they're progressive. Their first three albums were kind of a noise rock sound, like this one here. Boches is the name of this album. Or Boses, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Boces. Cool looking CD. One of the members, I can't think of their names right now, but one of the band members, who goes also by the name of Grasshopper, played for the Flaming Lips, and this is another one of their albums. I don't have anything on vinyl, but this is their CD. This is called See You on the Other Side. And on this CD, they tend to change the sound from that noise rock sound to a more, you still can't really call it radio friendly. There's a combination of both, but more of a mellower type psychedelic sound. And they've also produced music under a different name that's completely psychedelic. This one here is my favorite album from Mercury Rev, called All Is Dream. This is one that I highly recommend for people that are starting out in their music. Very beautiful album, and they moved completely away from that noise rock sound on this one. Called All Is Dream. And it does have one of their bigger hits on it called Night and Fog. But Spiders and Flies is another beautiful track. The Dark is Rising, Hercules, just an amazing album and highly recommended. A lot of people know of the band Mogwai, but not too many people know that they are considered progressive. Another pioneer of post-rock, so they're post-rock progressive, and they're considered progressive because their music doesn't stay in the typical post-rock genre formulas that were made, but they tend to very much stretch the boundaries of that sound. That's what their inner sleeves look like. 2 records to this set. And the labels are custom labels. This album has the song The Sun Smells Too Loud, which is probably their most famous track. And another one that I would like to get more of their music. This is another band I'd like to get more of, and it's called Mono. Now there's another band called Mono that people are a little more familiar with. They're a European band. This Mono is a post-rock band again. That uses a lot of dynamics, a lot of lushness to their music, and it always tends to build from a beautiful sound to a more harsh sound as the tracks go on. Some of their tracks are quite short, some are quite long. This is a little insert that it comes with as artwork that kind of coincide with the tracks. Again, it's another band that I highly recommend. If you want to check out post-rock, their post-rock is probably a little bit more easier to grab a hold of than what Godspeed You Black Emperor is, but still quite beautiful. They're a band from Japan. Yes is a band that everybody knows, of course. After they released their album Relayer, they kind of broke up for a bit and each produced their own albums. Patrick Moraz was one of those. He was the keyboardist during that time, and he released his own album. This is his solo album. Patrick Moraz. Actually, I was holding it the wrong way, I think. Here's the gatefold. And he does a pretty decent job with the solo album. He was a little more of, had more of a jazz influence than what Rick Wakeman did. Rick Wakeman was more along the lines of classically trained, where Patrick Moraz was more trained in jazz, so we can feel that influence on that album. And the last one I want to show is, for this part at least, is another Steve Wilson project called No Man. This is one that many people have never heard of, though they've released a lot of albums. They've released a lot of singles and 12-inch singles. Their music started out as kind of a experimental dance music and evolved by the time it gets to this particular album into more of a experimental, how would you describe it? It's not heavy music. It's actually quite layered, lush, beautiful music. Stephen Wilson plays all the instruments. Tim Bonus is the vocalist. It's got a beautiful, amazing voice. It's kind of got that airy sound to it that is highly textured. I mean, type of vocals that you would never mistake once you get to know how he sounds, the way his vocals are. You'll never miss hearing him again. When you do hear him, you'll recognize him immediately. This is the only album I have from No Man. They released, let's see, the name of this album is Together We're Stranger. They released several other albums. Probably my favorite from them is Returning Jesus and Carolina Skeletons and Schoolyard Ghosts. Those three albums are just amazingly beautiful songs, just wonderful arrangements. You do get to hear Stephen Wilson's guitar from time to time as some of the tracks do build, since it is quite dynamic also. but they're not up front as much as they are with Porcupine Tree or some of his solo albums. So again, highly recommended if you can find their albums, especially their later albums. It's something you'd want to check out. Um, Other artists have worked with them, including Robert Fripp has recorded on a few of their albums, has influenced some of their music, and also forgot his name now. Mel Collins. Mel Collins has also worked with them. So uh, anyway, that's part two of my unheard of progressive bands. Uh, it should be enough to keep you busy for a while, checking out their music, seeing which ones you like. Not everybody's going to like all of them, but you won't know until you give them a try. And just like all progressive music, it's not something that you fall in love with immediately, but you have to listen to really learn to appreciate them. So anyway, give these bands a chance, um, and look for part three of this to be coming probably within the next month. All right, thank you for watching. Bye.